You're listening to CJRT FM at 91.1 in Toronto, supported by thousands of listeners.
On the Arts with Tom Fulton.
Today's program is part number 2 in our tribute to children's authors. Our guest today, the author of Jasmine, Jan Trust, and the author of Black Diamonds, James Houston. We'll also be dipping into the children's collection. This is children's music, 14 original artists put out by the Tapestry People. James Houston, he has had such an interesting life. He's been an administrator in the far north. In fact, he was the man responsible for encouraging the Eskimos to begin their first prints. He is a sculptor in his own right, very successful one. He is also, as I mentioned, an author of adult books. The White Dawn, Ghost Fox, Spirit Wrestler, Eskimo Prince, and Ojibwe Summer. The White Dawn has already been made into a movie, starring Timothy Bottoms, remember that? And Ghost Fox, I believe they've already shot that one, and Spirit Wrestler is in the works. In addition to being an adult writer, James Houston also writes books for kids, many of them, about a dozen so far. And to top it all off, he's a relatively successful gentleman sheep farmer. Our first guest this afternoon, this early evening, the author of Black Diamonds, A Search for Arctic Treasure, James Houston.
You know, if I stuck to one thing, I'd probably make it go, but the way I just fool around and do a whole lot of different things and, you know, all a bit badly, I think, but I try.
That sounds like false modesty. Is there a change of gears or a mental, I don't know, something mental that you have to go through when you write for adults or you write for children, or do you make such a big distinction?
I don't make such a big distinction, really. In fact, I think that the simpler an adult novel can be, better chance for success. I mean, to be really clear, I think it's a wonderful discipline to write for children and try and make things absolutely clear and simple and straight. And I think often people stray from that in adult novels and other things, and that could be a difficulty.
On the other hand, there's the danger of being condescending to the younger adult when you're being simple and clear.
I don't think you must never do that. I try never to do that. I think I learned a lot from the Eskimos. They never... I mean, a story has to work for everybody in the Eskimo world. I mean, there's just that snow house or that house, and there are children in there that are 3 years old who are listening carefully to Unikakduingaluk, and there are old people of 80 who are listening, and everyone in between. Now, the story has to work for everybody, or it's no good. I mean, they don't have stories that don't work for everybody. So, actually, children are expected to take on rather racy material and handle it, and which they do wonderfully, and old people are expected to take simple truths and enjoy them. So that's a great combination.
Are you saying then that you learned some of these crafts of storytelling from the Eskimos?
I think I learned it all. It's the most important thing, that they can tell something so simply and beautifully and straight. I can tell you a very short example. A boy was sitting on a sleeping platform, and he saw a spider walking on his arm. He drew back his hand to strike the spider, and the spider said, "Wait, boy." He said, "I'm a grandfather." He said, "What will my grandchildren say if I don't get home?" He said, the boy said, "Imagine, so small and yet a grandfather." That's how they do it.
Black Diamonds, A Search for Arctic Treasure. I couldn't imagine a treasure in the Arctic. Now, I'm thinking of pirate treasure. When I see treasure on a young person's novel, I think of pirate treasure.
Yeah, right.
Is this not the treasure?
No, that is not the treasure. But I sort of hoped you would think that when you read the word treasure. I've always been fascinated by the word treasure, and it has many meanings, I think, but that's the most common one is pirate treasure, the thing that instantly comes to mind, I think. In this case, this is the first time I've ever tried to put two books together. the first book was Frozen Fire, and that was about these same two boys who are moving through life in an Arctic situation, one of them being an Inuit boy, and the other one, Inuk, I should say most probably, Inuk boy, and the other one, a boy from the south who joins him, and how they view life and what's happening. They are at first search for gold, and they're successful and yet unsuccessful. They find it, and yet they never really get their hands on it. And in this one, the quest is for black diamonds, and black diamonds is the word for oil. And they are not searching for oil, but they come across it and so on.
Are these books simply an exploration of another culture, or... You see, I think partly when children read, it should be a learning experience. It should be for pleasure and fun and stimulate them so they read later on in life. But there also should be some kind of learning experience for them. Is this true with...
I think so. I think in both of them there is a lot to be learned. Children, I have thousands of letters about those two books, well, most especially about Frozen Fire, but I am starting to get lots and lots of letters about black diamonds. And I feel that... one learns about the Arctic, all aspects of the Arctic in doing this, mostly through the eyes of... the Arctic is explained by the Inuk boy, and it is seen through the eyes of the boy who goes there, so that between the two of them, one can ask about it and the other one can explain it. So in many ways, they live a rich life there, and all kinds of things happen. The germ of knowledge of that book was about how oil was found in Alberta. And I've been told this on good authority, and I believe that it's true, that a cowboy was sitting on a horse, and they said to him, is that mosquito larvae lying there in the thing? He says, I don't know, and he was lighting up a cigarette, and so he... when he was finished, he took the match and he flipped it down into the mosquito larvae, burned all his own hair off and all the mane off the horse and the whole thing. Woof! And there was oil in Canada. That was the first time oil was ever seen. I don't know. I'll find out. He said, flung it in. So I more or less use that in the book, and I always enjoyed that.
It's amazing that you've never, after all these years, lost your enthusiasm for the North. In fact, I think it's growing.
It's growing. It's growing. No wonder I'm going there tomorrow.
Have you been... Well, since you worked up there, I imagine you've made some trips back.
Oh, I've made many, many trips back. As I say, I'm going tomorrow. I go very frequently. I've been in Alaska a whole lot this summer. I'm on an Alaskan board about arts and crafts and so on in Alaska. I've lived the last 5 months up on the Queen Charlotte Islands, which is on the border, in Canada, but on the border, the Alaskan-Canadian border, a place I dearly love. And so I keep in contact. And there I have been writing a book about Haida Indians and Northwest Coast Indians and so on. So.
And not only have you written about the North, but you've also written about the northeast of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Will you ever get south? Will you ever get into South America or Mexico?
I tell you, I got awfully involved in the caves in Spain about 2 years ago. I was in Spain, and I found, I know I have to do something about those caves. I'm going back to them a little later on this year. There's a great thing in those caves.
But now, those caves, is that not all part of your research in tying Europe into the North?
Yes, it is.
Right, so it's all fitting into the North, even if they are caves in Spain.
Exactly. Paleolithic culture coming out of... That's where my people come from. The chain of languages, goes from Hungarian Magyar in the south, which is like Yup, the Eskimo northern dialect of Yup, and then it goes north to Finland and Finno-Ugrian language, which is an earlier language of Finland, and then comes over into North America.
You have that one gift. I mean, you have many gifts, but you know so much of the background on what you write, and yet every book that I've read of yours is, first and foremost, a good, fast-paced, readable adventure, where you could have encumbered it with so much superfluous, but not superfluous, interesting information, but you don't do that.
Try not to.
Are there books of footnotes that secretly accompany each one of your novels?
Well, you have to. If I'm writing about Inuit in the north, I lived with them 14 years, so that was my research. And during that period of time, I read probably every Arctic book, a book on the Arctic that one would normally read. So the research for that is all in my head. And I rarely have to look to anything for that. But when I write about Indians, as I did the Naskapi recently in a book called River Runners, I did have to do some research on the Naskapi, and I enjoyed it immensely. I mean, it's just great to do that. And I have been doing some research now on Nutkin and Haida and so on. It's really a nice thing. It's worth doing the book just for the research. I mean, the pleasure of the research, and then not letting it overwhelm you. Or you've got to be very careful of research. I mean, I've been doing some research in the Hudson's Bay archives in Winnipeg just recently, and it's so rich in there. I mean, it's just perfect, and the material could be overwhelming. So you really have to be careful. I mean, it's the story that counts, and the making it accurate is enormously important. But if the story is lost at all, you're done for, I feel.
James Houston. Black Diamonds, A Search for Arctic Treasure for Young People, is published in hardcover by McClelland and Stewart. Certainly the children's market for records is becoming hotter and more lucrative all the time. For example, Raffi's first album has recently topped 200,000 in sales. The Smurf LP has sold so far over 500,000 units in Canada. 500,000. That is a monster bestseller. Sharon Lois and Bram have sold over 100,000 of their individual titles in this country. And so it goes, and so it goes. The Children's Collection Volume 1 has just been put out by Tapestry Records, one of the leaders in children's music and children's entertainment on record in Canada. They have a number of artists represented on this particular album. The one we're going to feature right now is certainly a song that every single child in Canada and every single adult is familiar with.
La tête, alouette, alouette, oh, alouette, gentille alouette, alouette, good. Every time we point to something, you point also, and you're going to sing out really loud on the answers. Here we go. Je te plumerai le front, je te plumerai le front, et le front, et le front, et la tête, et la tête. Alouette, alouette, oh, alouette, gentille alouette, alouette, je te plumerai les yeux, je te plumerai les yeux, et les yeux, et les yeux, et le front, et la tête, alouette, alouette, oh. Et le front, et la tête, alouette, alouette, oh, alouette, gentille alouette, alouette, je te plumerai la bouche, je te plumerai la bouche, et la bouche, et la bouche, et le nez, et les yeux, et le front, et la tête. Et la bouche, et le nez, et les yeux, et le front, et la tête.
The Travelers and Alouette, just one of the many good children's songs included on the children's collection 14 Original Artists, Volume Number 1 by Tapestry. Our next guest, Jan Truss, lives on a small wilderness farm near Water Valley, Alberta. She was a teacher for many years, both in England, where she was born, and in Canada for the last 25 years. But now, on her small wilderness farm near Water Valley, she writes full-time, looking out on a world very much like the protagonist in her latest book, published by Groundwood, Jasmine. Our guest, author Jan Truss.
I like to write for children or adults. I have a novel at the publishers at the moment that's for middle-aged. It's written about a middle-aged woman, and I've written for preschoolers and adolescents. So, well, I think one writes as one speaks, to take everybody seriously.
You take small children seriously. You have a play, A Very Small Rebellion. I don't think I can pronounce the real title of it.
No, the other one's Umaragio. There are two plays there. Umaragio, that's for one play, and A Very Small Rebellion is another play. There are two plays in that book.
Are they both for very small children? Or?
No, the Umaragio is for very small children, and the Very Small Rebellion is for middle school children.
What is middle school?
5, 6, 7, 8.
You told me this play has been produced...
No, that's the Umaragio. The little one,
Umaragio.
it's been to France, and 28 performances in Belgrade, 600 performances in Quebec, and it began its life in the studio theatre at Calgary University.
Well, how did so many people find out about it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have anything to do with marketing or... I guess when something's done in university, a lot of people know about these things, and it was translated into French by some French students and published in a magazine that's for theatre for young people, International Magazine, because the University of Calgary is closely associated with ACITESH, which is the organisation for young people's theatre throughout the world. And so they got hold of it, and then someone in France, someone in Russia, someone in Serbia got hold of it. And then I was enchanted when somebody in Quebec got hold of it, and Le Grand Théâtre de Québec did 600 performances, which delighted me that a little Western play should have found a home there for a little while.
You know, it's a pity we don't find out more about this kind of thing, because maybe Canada isn't so divided.
Oh, I don't find it divided. My goodness, I live in Calgary, and I could tell you how successful the bilingual program's been. We have bilingual people all over the place. You just... in my village, Water Valley, about which the book Jasmine is about, we have, at the very present moment, we have 4 students from Quebec in our village, which 15 years ago was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, was the home of great bigotry. And we have we have a couple of students from our own village who are beautifully bilingual now.
Well,
so there's progress.
Listen to Jasmine's name, Jasmine Marie Antoinette Stock.
That's from my village of... that's my romance from the village of Water Valley, which is between Calgary and Banff. And that new book, which came out in the States first, that's one of my heroines who's doing very nicely all through the States, a girl again. We need to know about these things, that we have characters written about, as I say, from the village, like Water Valley, where if there were not a stop sign, you wouldn't see it. And here is a character who's already well launched into the United States of America, doing very nicely. That book was originally a Margaret K. McElderry book, which is with Athenaeum, which is a very prestigious imprint. And there she came out of the bush of Alberta.
I find Jasmine is doing well all over the United States, but she's had problems with the 6th grade.
She is failing the 6th grade. It's about a kid who's failing the 6th grade. She's a used eldest child. I think many parents misuse or use the eldest child, you know, the little bit of babysitting, the washing up, the cleaning up, the making cookies, the putting the children to bed and all the things like that. Well, Jasmine, the used child, is also failing her grade, and she runs away into the bush. Well, I live in the bush, and I'd always wanted to write about it, so I've put the child and my love of the wilderness together, and written, I think, a rather nice novel for, again, for middle school people. That one's a middle school book.
You know, it's true. When I'm an only child, but I know that when you're a younger child, when somebody is older than you in the family, you always think, well, gee, they get all the privileges. They're the ones that... But the younger kids don't realize the tremendous amount of responsibility. They become
eldest.
little parents, really,
That's right.
the eldest
As
child.
Used. I want to
I like
say
that term,
the
used.
used child. And, yes, I was an eldest child, you see, so I have a lot of feelings. One writes from one's own experiences, and I have a lot of feeling about being an eldest child and wishing, and the terrible responsibility, the terrible guilt when one doesn't do one's responsibilities well.
I have a feeling that not only kids should read this book, that some parents should read this book, too.
Well, that's what a lot of the reviewers in the States have said, that this is a book not just for children, but for everybody. I think it's nicely written.
And it is a fantasy, too. I mean, you're not suggesting that every child should, to escape this problem, run into the bush.
Most of us would be far too afraid. There's a great, frightening world out there. Most of us wouldn't dare run away. We wouldn't. It's not to encourage children to run away at all.
Well, does she get a chance to be independent and stand on her own 2 feet?
Oh, she's a marvellous, gutsy little girl. She's really a marvellous little girl, and it is. People say, does it have a happy ending? It has an ending in which there is hope.
That doesn't. You're not saying it's a happy ending,
No,
though.
I'm saying it's an ending in which there is hope.
Well, she sounds like the kind of little girl you probably were.
Oh, yes.
Or would have liked to have been.
Oh, I'm sure I'm the little girl with hope who grew into the woman with possibilities.
Now, just a minute. I have a copy of A Very Small Rebellion by Jan Truss in front of me, and I also have a play called A Very Small Rebellion.
They are loosely linked. They're both to do with Louis Riel. Louis Riel, after all, is one of Canada's heroes and very much part of our West.
Unfortunately, he was hung, of course.
Oh, yes, but to me,
there's a certain stigma
to
there.
me, he's one of our heroes. You see, you come with these immigrant voices, and you see heroes where people were hung, which is what it is.
Hanged, I guess. If he had been in the States, of course, he would not have been hanged. He would have been...
Well, I wanted to make him a hero, so I wrote that children's novel, first of all, to make Louis Riel a hero, but I wrote a modern-day story. It's the modern-day story of some Indian and Métis kids who have a small rebellion. They have their own small rebellion, which is rather parallel to the rebellion that the Louis Riel and his people had.
And I see you set up the original rebellion so that kids know what you're talking about,
indeed,
what you're basing it on.
It's right there in the book. And that one is published by an Edmonton publisher of whom I'm very proud. That's John LaBelle, who set up his little publishing firm to bring Canadian history to Canadian children. And he's done it. The whole business of publishing is as difficult as the business of writing. And there is a courageous publisher who has done that.
So I see you can go 2 ways. You can go with the prestigious publishing companies. You have an eye on worldwide marketing, too. But you'll also support a small publisher who's trying to do something you believe in.
You bet I support that man. Yes, I certainly would support John LaBelle. I'd almost write him a book for free. I feel so strongly that he put his life on the line to make this publishing house, yes. Well, and that book was a Children's Book Centre choice book. And when we had the first list of Canadian books for Canadian children, that was on the list of the first best 50 books for Canadian children. So that did well for him, as well as for me.
It seems like a good format, too. I hope you're not going to leave this just at Riel and A Very Small Rebellion.
Oh, he does a lot of others. John LaBelle, you'll find he's covered a lot of other historic...
But what about you?
Oh, well, there's The Judgment of Clifford Sifton, a play there. There's a play there called The Judgment of Clifford Sifton, which is a very gutsy play, again, for middle school people, about, Clifford Sifton, who brought out the pioneers. Oh, come, come, come to Canada, where the skies are always blue. Oh, come, come, come to Canada, there's wealth for you and you and you.
Sounds like a snow job to me.
Yes, it was a snow job. Lovely Clifford Sifton. Well, that's The Judgment of Clifford Sifton. That's a play that had more than 100 performances, I think, in Calgary.
Now, when you say it's kind of gutsy, I open to page 22, damn you, damn you. This never used to happen when I was in school, middle school.
Oh, is that... I don't even remember where damn you is. Perhaps I wouldn't have noticed. Damn you. I wonder what that's about. I can't... someone was just angry. Don't you ever say damn you?
Well, never.
Oh, one doesn't talk to one.
Absolutely lily pure.
Well, one doesn't talk down to small children. Well, those are big children. My goodness me, they've heard more than dams.
Well, I guess
I think that's the worst. That probably is the only four-letter word.
But I guess that's the point. You're not trying to isolate them or try to pretend that reality is something other than what it is.
Not at all. Not at all. One of the scenes in that deals very delicately and rather beautifully, I think, with one of the pregnant women. When I did my research for the pioneer people, I found that so many women were left alone to have their babies while their husbands went off to work in the winter. And so I have a beautiful scene, almost an Ophelia scene in that play, where a young girl is having her baby by herself.
You mean without benefit of midwife?
No,
or?
nothing. It's a very tender and telling scene. I use it a lot in my readings, and that proved a very telling part of the play for the kids.
What dictates whether the story you want to tell comes out as a play or as a novel?
Oh, usually I was asked. The plays were, all of those plays were commissioned. I was simply asked if I would write a play, because we have a theatre that did plays for, historical plays for the Calgary School Board. It was Alberta Theatre Project, which has an adult season as well, but for a long time their mandate was to do Canadian history plays for the school population, and so I was commissioned to do those.
What about Bird at the Window? Now,
that's another success story for Alberta. It was the winner of the first Alberta Search for a New Novelist award, that back in 1974. In 1980 it came out in the States as published by Harper & Row, and last year it was on the Carlson list, which is the list chosen by young adults as the best books of 1981. So this book that was a prize winner in Alberta, again, about another Alberta girl, should we say, from my village again, and was chosen as one of the best books of 1981 for young adults.
Is it just a coincidence that all these protagonists are coming from your village?
Well, no, a writer writes, so why would I look further? It's than my marvellous Alberta. You know, I mean, that's what I know, isn't it? It's to write about Toronto, except being interviewed.
Which would make a very dull book, I'm sure.
Well, I know it's my knowledge of this part is very frail, but writers usually write about what they know best.
You're really gung-ho about Alberta, aren't you?
It is mine own. Well, gung-ho, what do you mean? Well, it's as a writer, I shall write about... You'll find that there's quite an abrasive side to my writing, whether it be for little children or grown people. Bird at the Window was an adult book first.
Now, what do you mean by abrasive?
Well, I'm not dishonest. I'm not... you say gung-ho, which implies that I might be...
overly enthusiastic.
Overly enthusiastic.
And sugarcoat some things.
Sugarcoat it. I am not a sugary lady at all. My writing is not sugary in any way. It is very hard, down-to-earth writing, whether it be for adults or for children. I would say it's lyrical, but honest.
Jan Truss. Jasmine by Jan Truss is published in paperback by Groundwood. Her other books also available, Bird in the Window and A Very Small Rebellion. This has been On the Arts, the Sunday edition. Assistant producer Kevin Currier, technical producer Jeff Stubbins. I'm Tom Fulton.